Let's get started. Good morning. Welcome to the Thursday, February 12th SIG Multicluster call. Thanks for joining. There's a few items on the agenda that got carried over from the last time because there was a mix-up on the time, I think. Who wants to start? Can anybody hear me?
Sorry,
Yeah.
I forgot. I got mute. My bad.
No worries.
Yeah, it's just a friendly ping on that PR. I have resolved all the comments. Stefan,
Yeah.
in the suggestions, Stefan and Croydon, you have suggested. So if there's any further questions or concerns, please just let me know.
All right. Thanks. Yeah, I need to take another pass on this one. All right, I'll do that, and then the same on the cluster inventory, I guess.
Yeah, that's a corresponding one in the inventory repo. And thanks so much, Xiujian, for reviewing that. I think that once the KP change have been merged, this one should be good to go as well.
Yep. Okay. All right. I'll take a look at that one as well, and then I guess the meat of this is the release suggestions. Which is, very timely because we've been discussing exactly this in MCS API. So it's good to have an actual suggested implementation. And I can't hear you. Mike.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Kahil.
Right.
Nice to
Nice
meet
to meet
you.
you.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm not native English speaker, so
Oh, that's fine.
yeah. I want to move forward this release flow.
Mm-hmm.
So what should I do next step?
Well, I haven't had the time to look in detail at the change. But yeah, it's probably not the time to do that. But unless there's anything particular you want to talk about. But so there was a comment from Mike to say that we should probably discuss this in the doc about the release process in general. So that's probably true, but I really need to take a look at your proposal because it might just do everything for us. There was so we had a discussion on Tuesday's call about this. But what I like about your PR is that it answers a few of the questions that we had here. So, for example, which registry should we use? And your PR just uses the GHCR Kube6 repo, which is nice. And so we had a couple of questions, not specifically about your PR, just about the process in general. Somebody said that it would be good to figure out some automation around change logs, but I don't think that's really, I mean, that wouldn't block your PR. We can sort that out later. What I was curious about is when you mentioned that right, the independent release cycles, because the Go library and each plugin should be releasable independently. So does that mean you would see, and how I know you said there's a file that gives the version numbers. Let's see in the PR right here. Okay, so each plugin gets its own version.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it can be, so the Go library, obviously, because of the way Go works, it gets its version from the tag. And then and then the plugin version, that's just used for the container image tag, right? Okay. Yeah, well, so the next steps are really for me to review this. I'll try to do that tomorrow or early next week. And then we'll probably end up discussing it again in Tuesday's call. But I understand it's difficult for you to be there, so that's not a problem. It'll be more about whether we can apply this to other SIG-MC repos, starting with the MCS API one. And the main thing that we were trying to address there, and that's not covered by your PR, but that's not a problem because it's more about process than actual technical details, is making it so that we don't need the manual part, the manually tagging in GitHub, or discussing whether we want that or not, because there is still well, it seems to me it's not all that difficult to go through a manual release on GitHub, and the nice thing is that it forces you to think about what you put in the release notes. So I think that's maybe an advantage. And so yes, so there was one other thing I had. I was wondering in your process. So you mentioned, and I guess, well, so the answer probably is that we need it for the independent release cycles. But you mentioned that the release, to actually run the release, you'd either run it manually or tag. And so I was curious about why we'd want two different approaches, but then because of the release independence, we need to be able to run the workflow without pushing a tag if we're just releasing plugins. And then, yeah, so I think, was it Chujin had yeah,
Yeah,
interesting suggestion about having an E2E test.
yeah, it's only yes, I think we need some E2E test on that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
sanity
mean,
check before we push the images.
yeah, and I'm not quite sure. Yeah, so I think for this release, like this repo, because this repo currently is only API, the Go library and some binary. The binary doesn't need to have the same release uh of the Go lib. I think that makes sense because we I mean I don't we could have a updated Go library, but the user doesn't need to be using another different version of the
Yeah,
binary. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, or the other way around as well. We might want to fix something in the binary, but there's no point in encouraging Go library users to upgrade because there isn't any significant change there. So yeah, it makes sense on both sides, I think.
I think another thing that we want to discuss is for this plugin, how do we position them? Like, is that just a example or some code that someone could import and reuse? So it's like the binary could be used by some cloud provider that has for example, the token set in a secret.
Yeah. So are you asking about the level of expectation we should be setting?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure. What do others feel about this? I mean, I haven't worked on the plugins at all, but I suspect all that we can say is that it's example code, and if people want to use it, it's up to them.
Okay. So can I ask what's a mechanism for the MCS API? I mean, I think it's more on API definition. So
Yeah.
what's the mechanism of the release for example for MCS API?
Right. So, well, currently I just do it manually, like this, from the release process here, and then draft a new release. And I write the release notes manually. And so I do that whenever there's a significant change that people might want to use without having to pull in a commit reference. Or before we make a significant change so that people can get the latest version, so that people get a chance to use the latest code before we make something that could change things significantly. So that's one of the ideas. For example, if we bump to beta, we'll do one release before we bump to beta, and then a new release with the actual beta artifacts. Not that since it's just additive, it wouldn't make much difference for the beta stuff, but I think we did that for yeah, no, there's no example of that sort of change. So I did 0.2.0 because it had been ages since we'd done a release. People were putting in the heads, and we had a number of things that we wanted people to use, and then same here in 0.3.0 because we'd added constants to make it easier to write code, and in particular we'd embedded the CRDs, and Cilium wanted that. So yeah, it's all just manual, and so we're discussing what it should like, because one of the things that we want to do, so currently MCS API only releases the Go library, but one of the things that we do want to do is to package the conformance tests as a container image and release those. And so that raises all the questions about the container repositories and so on that are all addressed by the PR on cluster inventory. So I think cluster inventory would end up being the first of the SIG-MC repos with a proper release process, or at least release automation. And when we can copy that across.
Yeah.
Okay, and then there was handling vendor-specific plugins. as well. So I haven't actually had a look at this one.
So I can provide some background if
Mhm.
is okay. Because in the cluster profile, we have a way that you can set up the credential provider. So um, there is already a secret plugin, which is a binary that you can read secret from a certain namespace and retrieve the token from the secret. So this
Mhm.
PR is about, I think it's a wrapper of the EKS binary, like it will run the EKS command line for specifically for the EKS cluster. Um, so I think the question is, should
All right.
this repo maintain this kind of plugin because it's quite vendor specific, like it will only work in EKS. Um, or it should be vendor to maintain those plugin.
Yeah. So there's convenience for users on the one hand, but then actually getting vendors to support stuff on the other hand. And yeah, I haven't really thought about this all that much. My initial feeling is that we should encourage vendors to support their platforms if they want to. But I do also see the value in having so not necessarily ignoring the neutrality side of things. I do think there's value in having in the repo an implementation that shows how to handle cloud provider specific access.
Yeah.
Um,
I think another gap that we maintain this plugin is it would not be easy to do a E2E test.
exactly.
Uh,
That's my big concern. Yeah. And that's true for all the cloud providers.
right.
Yeah. And there's examples of both in the CNCF landscape, right? So Kubernetes itself had a bunch of cloud specific support code and went through a lengthy process of moving it all elsewhere. But then on the other hand, for example, Core DNS has cloud specific plugins that are part of the Core DNS code base. So for example, for AWS Route 53. So we'd really have to weigh the pros and cons. But I think the E2E aspect is a uh, big issue because we'd have to have some way of automatically testing that all these plugins keep on working. And I think we'd have to define fairly clear criteria to say what's required to keep any plugin, in fact, any plugin in the repo, because if plugins stop working, we're doing a disservice to users if we continue shipping them, even though if we say they're just example code, then there are no guarantees, and there aren't any guarantees anyway. But if we ship stuff that doesn't work, that's not great. So we have to be able to tell users this stuff is broken, and then encourage people to fix things. And again, How do we go about getting the vendors to help with that? I don't know. So I know of one way we can get the vendors to help, and that's on the E2E testing side of things, because they usually have programs where you can get credits for open source projects. And I suspect there's stuff like that on the CNCF side of things as well. But specifically with the maintenance, I don't know. I suspect that if we had a lot of these, the people who'd end up maintaining them would be the people who are using them or who rely on them most. And that wouldn't be the vendors, it will be the people trying to build projects that use these. So I don't really have a great answer. Maybe since, excuse me. So in the SIG calls on Tuesdays or Thursdays, we never get people from AWS, but we do have some folks from Azure and GKE. So maybe we can ask them whether they think it would be viable to ask the cloud providers to maintain something like this. Would that make sense as a sort of next step for this?
Yeah, I think that's good.
All right. Yeah. Chen, please go ahead.
Yeah, so on the Azure side, I guess a little bit concern I'm having right now out of my mind was that at this moment Azure does provide the Kubernetes plugin as a some kind of like a Uber authentication solution for AKS clusters. And that plugin obviously, like any other piece of software, isn't perfect. So I can see people start building wrappers on top of that. A little bit concern I have on my end was that, say, different people will start building different wrappers, and we keep them in the same repo, hosted by the whole SIG. I feel that some might interpret that as kind of like an endorsement, even though we couldn't provide any long-term vendor-specific guarantees.
Yeah.
So that's a concern on my end. But just a random thought on my mind. I would really love to see some kind of performance test though, specific to this. To basically, if people want to start implementing their own plugins, or maybe we can add that to the Kubernetes plugin ourselves for the AKS side. We can showcase that this plugin can work with the right configuration, can work with the whole authentication flow we have proposed in the cluster inventory API group. I think that would be something really nice. Maybe in each individual repos we can show this kind of performance badge that will work with the flow, something like that. But keeping everything under the same repo might have some concerns, because from the vendors that we really couldn't provide any guarantees, and there will be so many different implementations, which are all equally valid.
Yeah. That's two good points. So I think I agree. It would be good to have conformance tests, definitely. And so the endorsement side of things, that's always a tough one, because I mean it's easy to imagine us having implementations at least for the big three, but then why not for other providers? And it goes back to what I was saying earlier. What happens if one of the plugins stops working? Whose responsibility is it to fix it? And if there are people who are more active fixing issues on one of the plugins, is that not also a sort of endorsement? Even though it might just be a reflection of the skill set of the people involved, or what they actually need to use to get their job done. But definitely. So in any case, the conformance test would be useful, regardless of what we end up deciding. and I'll bring it up in the Tuesday call as well to see if we can at least see what people's feelings are, even if we don't end up with a consensus. I'll maybe also ask around in CNCF, because obviously there have been lessons learned there from, at least on the Kubernetes side of things. So maybe there's some unofficial stance on this sort of issue that we could follow. Okay, so our time's nearly run out. So like I said, I'll take a look at the first three PRs. So the two PRs outstanding still there, the top ones, and then the lib release one, which I'm very, very interested in, and then I'll bring up the vendor specific aspects on the Tuesday call. So I'll try to keep notes, or I'll add notes from next Tuesday's call in the agenda, so you can catch up on what's happening there. And yeah, we can revisit this in 2 weeks' time in the next APAC call. All right, anything else before we end the call? I'll take that as a no. So thank you very much for joining and for participating. And I hope to see you next time. Have a good rest of the week.
Yeah, thank you. A good one.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.